Helicopters fly over the skies of Snowfield while a woman watches her phone screen closely at a gas station. A news report states that the large explosion in the desert area south of the city was caused by an accident involving a gas company, and the cause is still under investigation. Because of that, all routes leading to the desert have been closed by the authorities, as well as the airspace. Inside a moving car, upon hearing the news, a man in the back seat says that this event was a signal marking the beginning of everything, and that the next 7 days will be so entertaining they might even make people sick. Later, when she enters Snow Drugstore, the woman from the first scene asks the clerk if there's a cheap motel nearby. Before answering, he notices she's new in town and asks if she's traveling. She says she came from Japan, which immediately sparks the man's interest, as he describes it as a very interesting country. His father traveled there once. He asks which part of Japan she's from, but visibly disconnected from the conversation. She doesn't answer, which leads the clerk to switch topics and comment that the tattoo on her hand looks pretty cool. Saying quietly to herself that it's not exactly a tattoo, the girl's head is suddenly and painfully struck by a voice calling her name Ayaka Sajo and ordering her to participate in the Holy Grail War. Completely indifferent to the girl's discomfort, the clerk stands at the drugstore entrance, commenting that helicopters have been flying overhead since morning, which, according to him, is bad for business. Sajo asks why, and the man explains that, from what it seems, some gas tank or pipe in the desert exploded last night. At the same time, as Sajo stepped outside to look at the helicopters, the man in the car spotted the mark on her hand through a technological device, recognizing the symbol as a command seal. From inside the administrative office of the Coleman Special Correction Center, a woman approaches and asks Director Faldeus who the woman on the screen is, but even he can't say. All he knows is that if she is a mage, she's not hiding her magical energy. It could be a provocation on her part, but Faldeus truly believes she hasn't even noticed their surveillance. In any case, he doesn't think she'll be a problem. The director asks whether his colleague discovered anything about yesterday's desert incident, and she reports that strange marks have been appearing on the familiars found in comatose states, injuries that look like some kind of disease or curse. Hearing this, Faldeus assumes it's related to the Holy Grail War. On that subject, he shows on his computer images of two young individuals named Fladiscardos and Tenechelk, as well as a silver wolf that appears to be a chimera. According to the director, 4 masters have been confirmed, including the police chief, in other words, 3 humans and a cop. There are signs that Jester Caltolet, one of the candidates to become a master, succeeded in summoning a heroic spirit. However, several skeletal remains were found in his workshop, so no one knows if he's alive or dead. As for the Kuroka couple, it's absurd to think they refused to participate in the Holy Grail War, especially considering what kind of couple they are. With so many irregularities, Director Faldeus is having serious difficulties organizing the operation mechanically. But in any case, he asks his colleague to register the girl on the monitor as a level 2 observation target. The woman asks about Chief Orlando, and Faldeus says they have a great opportunity to share information with the police chief, with Flat, and with the Silver Wolf. After all, disguising a Holy Grail War is no easy task. Meanwhile, at the Clock Tower, headquarters of the mages in England, 2 men discuss the unbelievable, a Holy Grail War taking place in the United States. According to Lord L. Meloy Roman II, the person who forced Lord Rohngall to use that disguise was Faldeus. Rohngall knows that very well and remembers it with anger, especially because Faldeus pretended to be his apprentice and deceived him completely. Regardless, L. Meloy points out that such behavior is typical of a mage disciples usurping their mentors. They also discuss what the United States' goal could be in starting a war of this scale, because if the desire were simply for the Holy Grail, there would be no need to advertise it. Rohngall cannot understand the reason and asks the Lord's opinion. He believes that at least one faction in this war wants to hide information, while another wants large-scale dissemination. Both factions appear and vanish behind the scenes. Basically, the United States is not acting from a single position. One group is treating the Grail's manifestation as a checkpoint to pass through, or they are trying to stabilize or mass-produce the war system itself. The goal may have been gathering a large number of mages in Snowfield to analyze the structure of the conflict. Outraged, Rohngall asks whether the United States wants other mages outside their ranks to analyze a miracle on the level of the third magic. Lord L. Meloy agrees that such a thing is unthinkable for them, as Clock Tower mages seek the root individually. However, those who deeply study the mysteries may have different views. In any case, El Meloy also has trouble dealing with his own apprentices, and it's important to remember that many pieces are still missing before this entire puzzle can be understood. According to Rohngall, Faldeus mentioned there would be no Saber-class servant in this Holy Grail War, which makes it clear to Lord El Meloy that absolutely everything about this conflict is irregular, so irregular that he questions whether the US actually intends to start this battle. Unfortunately, anything he thinks now is nothing more than speculation or intuition, and he hates the idea that there are people out there treating this war as if it were just a show. At that moment, a cheerful little girl watches her enemy's movements while eating popcorn in her room. Back at Snow Drugstore, the clerk finally gives Sajo a few lodging recommendations. She asks whether any of those places have an elevator, but noticing that he doesn't have the slightest idea, she lets it go and says goodbye, though not before leaving an absurd amount of money on the counter. The man asks her why, but before leaving the store, she simply says she wouldn't be able to spend all of it anyway. As she walked absent-mindedly down the street, Sajo was then approached by a hidden man who had been looking for her. Meanwhile, a man receives a phone call in his office and tells Castor, on the other end of the line, that he will deliver a top-of-the-line watch to his room later, as long as he continues his work. Surrounded by fast food, Castor asks for a recommendation for a tasty and expensive local dish, since he's not the one paying anyway. The man apologizes for the previous night and asks for Castor's opinion about the incident in the desert, but Castor has no idea it even happened, which deeply irritates the man. He starts feeling like a fool for expecting an opinion from a heroic spirit like him. The man is about to hang up the phone, but freezes when Castor asks if he also acts that cold with Francesca, if the things young Faldeus says are easier to understand, or if he prefers talking about the Japanese couple, the Kiruokas. The man on the other end is shocked that Castor figured all this out, although Castor assures him that he didn't link the guy's 5 senses to his own, especially in the age of the internet, where you can learn almost anything with Wi-Fi and a PC, even inside this miniature garden. The man assumes he is talking about the Phantom Relic, and Castor is almost offended that the guy would think he can't use modern tools just because he is a servant. Looking at his reconnaissance report, Castor asks what the man thinks of him calling this girl named Tanae Chelk, or the police chief Orlando Reeve, who is so popular with his subordinates and good friends with suspicious manipulation experts like Francesca and Faldeus. In fact, he points out that Faldeus is one of the people who organized this Holy Grail War and has many spies planted in the syndicate, which makes the man increasingly nervous and worried. To raise the tension even more, Castor suggests that this call might be tapped, or someone might be listening through thaumaturgy. Given the circumstances, the man on the other line admits he underestimated Castor's abilities, but makes it clear he also has plans if Castor keeps talking like this. Mocking him, Castor asks if the man is going to silence him with a command seal, but says there's a better way to do that instead of using something that can only be used 3 times. In this case, as he already said, just giving him the best food in large amounts is enough to keep Castor quiet. In the next scene, Sajo is once again being bothered by that female voice in her head that demands she take part in the Holy Grail War, while her body and consciousness are projected into a completely dark and psychedelic environment, as if she had been dragged into a nightmare. According to that voice, if Sajo runs, the curse will devour her life. Then Sajo wakes up in an unknown place and notices she is chained by the ankles and wrists. The man responsible for capturing her appears and says that if her idea was to hide, then she greatly underestimated him. He states that the mark she has is not a command seal and asks why she came to this city, and Sajo says she doesn't know for sure, only that a strange woman in white told her to come. The man mocks the fact that she is a magus who strayed from her path and is being used as a sacrifice by that flesh doll of the Einsburn. But Sajo says she is not a magus. Without getting into that, the man says she will have to stay there a while longer because his client loves a little game, but that she shouldn't worry, this is just a test to see whether the servant he is about to summon, a noble hero once known as the King of the Knights of the Round Table, would obey an order to kill a defenseless woman. While the kidnapper performs the summoning ritual, Ayaka Sajo wonders if this is part of the curse from the woman in white, and whether she will be satisfied with this tragic end Sajo will suffer. This fate that seems inevitable given the circumstances. However, a woman appears and kills the man with a type of supernatural power, making a giant arm made of some strange material pierce through his body. After taking care of the problem, the woman asks whether Sajo is a magus seeking the Holy Grail. But before any answer, Sajo's shackles melt, and a huge surge of magical energy erupts on the stage where the two are standing. Watching from her room, the girl who had been eating popcorn now enjoys herself as if watching a movie, waiting to see what the woman will do after seeing her master being killed the moment he was summoned. On the other hand, the little girl is surprised to see a Saber showing up. Now, on the stage where everything is happening, this Saber stands before the woman who saved Sajo and comments on the unusual situation they are in her disguise and this surge of power. Speaking of which, he asks whether she has any connection to the old man of the mountain. Then she puts on such an impressive display of speed that it's the first time he has ever seen someone faster than Loxley. After disappearing with that same speed, the woman hides in one of the opponent's blind spots and then attacks him. But he manages to defend himself with ease and draws his Excalibur, responding with a magical strike so powerful it causes a devastating explosion in the theater where they are. A massive hole is blown into the ceiling. But the knight must admit that his opponent managed to escape the attack, which is quite a feat. Regardless, he turns to Sajo and asks if she is his master. Outraged, Sajo says she is not, and that she will no longer follow the will of people like him. At that moment, state officers quickly arrive by helicopter and, entering through the demolished ceiling, point their weapons at the knight and apprehend him for trespassing and property destruction. Without delay, the newspapers begin reporting to the public about the explosion at the Opera Theater located in downtown Snowfield, where cameras capture two possible suspects being taken out of the building in handcuffs by the police. At the same time, after learning from a contact that the explosion was caused by the summoned Saber, Director Faldeus orders them to say it was nothing more than an accident in which the paint used in the renovation caught fire. However, things get completely out of control when Saber himself addresses the entire public and admits that he is ashamed for having destroyed the theater, a sacred place for the arts. Even so, relying on his knightly vows, Arthur Pendragon promises to compensate this society for his terrible act. After that, Faldeus obviously gives up trying to hide the incident and wonders whether this was part of Francesca's plan. Meanwhile, still watching every moment, the little girl bursts into laughter in her bed after seeing what just happened. Barely able to contain herself, she points out that she has followed many Holy Grail wars, but this is the first time she has ever seen a servant getting arrested by the police. Speaking of him, still in front of the media and the crowd, Arthur declares that he prays for everyone's lives to be filled with the glory of music. Shifting now to the branch of the Holy Church in Las Vegas, Nevada, a priest asks whether Hansa is listening, and he replies that he is, even though he is on his phone while the two of them talk. According to Hansa, the priest only needs to convey God's will for him to eradicate the enemy. As he has already said, the priest reminds him that Hansa's role this time is not to act as an executor, but as a supervisor, because if fighting becomes necessary, the young man is certainly far more effective than an old man like him. He also comments that it would be best to stop using the phone when speaking to someone, especially since Hansa needs to act like a priest. Hearing that, Hansa puts the phone away and, while heading toward the door, promises to wear casual clothes when he goes to the casino. Before he can leave, the priest tosses a poker chip toward Hansa's back, and he manages to catch the projectile in time. According to the priest, it was only a test. He feared the young man's reflexes might have become rusty from using his phone so much. After leaving the church, Hansa calls upon the quartet for their first assignment in a long time, a group of young women who, by the looks of it, are anything but harmless. Check out these videos appearing on your screen and subscribe so you don't miss the next part.